The cardiovascular system, also called the circulatory system, is the transportation system of the body. The major structures that make this possible are the heart, blood vessels, and blood. Simply put, the heart pumps the blood in order to move nutrients through the blood vessels to nourish and remove the metabolic waste from the body.
The heart is at the center of the CV system. It is located in the left-hand side of the chest beneath the sternum and ribcage, which provide protection. An adult's heart is the size of a closed fist. The heart is a hollow muscular pump that drives blood into and through the arteries in order to deliver it to the working tissues and muscles. The heart is surrounded by a twin-layered sac known as the pericardium. The cavities between the layers are filled with pericardial fluid, whose purpose is to prevent friction as the heart beats. The heart wall itself is made up of three layers: epicardium, the outer layer; myocardium, the strong middle layer that forms most of the heart wall; and endocardium, the inner layer. The right side of the heart is separated from the left by a solid wall known as a septum. This prevents blood on the right side coming in contact with the blood on the left. The heart is divided into four chambers. The two top chambers are called atriums, and the two lower chambers are called ventricles. The chambers on the right supply blood at a low pressure to the lungs via the pulmonary arteries, arterioles, and capillaries, where gaseous exchanges take place. Here carbon dioxide passes from the blood to the alveoli of the lungs and oxygen is taken on board. This blood is then returned to the left side of the heart via the capillaries, venules, and veins. When the chambers of the left side of the heart are full, it contracts simultaneously with the right side, acting as a high-pressure pump. It supplies oxygenated blood via the arteries, arterioles, and capillaries to the tissues of the body, such as muscle cells. Oxygen passes from the blood to the cells, and carbon dioxide is taken on board. The blood then returns to the right atrium of the heart via the capillaries, venules, and veins. Atrium, the upper two chambers of the heart. It receives blood returning to your heart from either the body or the lungs. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood from the superior and inferior vena cava. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the left and right pulmonary veins. Ventricles, the bottom two chambers of the heart. The wall of the left ventricle is thicker because it has to pump blood around the body, which requires a more forceful contraction. The right ventricle pumps blood to the pulmonary circulation for the lungs, and the left ventricle pumps blood to the systemic circulation for the body. Atrioventricular valves. The purpose of these valves is to prevent blood from flowing in the wrong direction. Tricuspid valve, situated between the right atrium and the right ventricle. Bicuspid valve, situated between the left atrium and the left ventricle. Following the movement of blood from the atrium into the ventricle, the AV valve snaps shut, which causes the first sound of the heart. Pulmonary valves prevent blood flowing in the wrong direction. These are located between each ventricle and the artery leaving the heart. They make the second sound of the heart. Aorta, the body's main artery. It originates in the left ventricle and carries oxygenated blood to all parts of the body except the lungs. Superior vena cava, a vein that receives deoxygenated blood from the upper body to empty into the right atrium of the heart. Inferior vena cava, a vein that receives deoxygenated from the lower body to empty into the right atrium of the heart. Pulmonary vein, carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium of the heart. Pulmonary artery, carries deoxygenated blood from the heart back to the lungs. It is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. As the heart contracts, blood flows around a complex network of vessels: arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, and veins. The structure of these different vessels within the cardiovascular system is determined by their different functions and the pressure of blood within them. Blood flowing through the arteries is rich in oxygen and appears red. As the blood travels through the capillaries, it drops off oxygen and picks up carbon dioxide. By the time it reaches the veins, the blood appears blue as it is deoxygenated. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, always oxygenated apart from the pulmonary artery, which goes to the lungs. They have thick muscular walls to help carry blood under high pressure. Have elastic fibers that allow the artery to expand to accommodate blood ejected from the heart. Carry blood under high pressure. They do not require valves as the pressure remains so high. The arteries branch into arterioles that ultimately deliver blood to the capillaries. Arterioles transport blood from arteries to capillaries. Arterioles are the main regulators of blood flow and pressure. During exercise, muscles require an increased blood flow in order to get extra oxygen. To accommodate this, the diameter of arterioles leading to the muscles dilates. Other areas like the gut have their blood flow temporarily reduced to compensate for this, and the diameter of their arterioles is decreased. The walls of arterioles are slightly thinner compared to the walls of arteries. They contain a high percentage of smooth muscle. Capillaries. Capillaries form an extensive network that connects arteries and veins by uniting arterioles and venules. Found in the muscles and lungs, they are the smallest of all the blood vessels, one cell thick, which allows nutrients, oxygen, and waste products to be transferred. Where gas exchange takes place, oxygen passes through the capillary wall and into the tissue. Carbon dioxide passes from the tissue into the blood. The pressure of blood within the capillaries is higher than that in veins, but less than that in arteries. The number of capillaries in muscles may be increased through frequent exercise. Venules. Venules are tiny vessels that drain blood from capillaries into veins. Venule walls have three layers. Venules have thinner walls than arterioles. Lastly, veins. Veins carry blood to the heart, always deoxygenated apart from the pulmonary vein, which goes from the lungs to the heart. They have thin walls, have larger internal lumen. Blood flow is slower and under low pressure, have valves to prevent blood flowing backwards. And lastly, they branch into smaller vessels called venules, which extend to the capillary network. The key functions of the cardiovascular system are to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the body, remove waste products, thermoregulation, vasodilation, and vasoconstriction. The cardiovascular system works in conjunction with the respiratory system to deliver oxygen to the tissues of the body and remove carbon dioxide. In order to do this effectively, the cardiovascular system is divided into two circuits, known as the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. Nutrients such as glucose from digested carbohydrate are delivered from the digestive tract to the muscles and organs that require them for energy. Removal of waste products. Blood also absorbs the waste products made by cells and transports them to the excretory organs, like the kidneys or lungs, for removal from the body. Thermoregulation. Thermoregulation is the process of temperature regulation. Example, keeping the body at a healthy temperature and be able to warm or cool the body whenever it is needed. Temperature changes within the body are detected by sensory receptors called thermoreceptors, which in turn relay information to the hypothalamus in the brain. When a change in temperature is recorded, the hypothalamus reacts by initiating certain mechanisms in order to regain a safe temperature range, such as the vasodilation or vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction. When we are too cold, the blood vessels supplying warm blood to the skin becomes narrow or constrict. This reduces the flow of warm blood near the surface of the skin and reduces the heat loss. This is why some people's skin looks paler when they feel too cold. Vasodilation. When we are too hot, blood vessels supplying blood to the skin can swell or dilate. This allows more warm blood to flow near the surface of the skin. where the heat can be lost to the air. This is why some people's skin looks redder when they feel too hot. Function of the blood. Blood provides the fluid environment for cells and is the medium by which many materials are carried to and from these cells. The main function of blood are oxygen transport, clotting, fighting infection. The average adults have 4 to 5 liters of blood. Blood is made up of 4 constituents: plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Oxygen transport. Exercise increases the demand of oxygen. Blood transports oxygen from the lungs to the parts of the body that require it. It also transports metabolic waste from the cells to areas of disposal. Example, waste products from the tissues are transported to the kidneys. Blood clotting. Blood contains tiny fragments of cells called platelets. These platelets are involved in blood clotting and scab forming. When skin is wounded, platelets are able to first release chemicals that cause soluble fibrinogen proteins to form a mesh of insoluble fibrin fibers across the wound, and lastly stick together to form clumps that get stuck in the fibrin mesh. Red blood cells also get stuck in the fibrin mesh, forming a clot. This develops into a scab, which protects the wound as it heals. Fighting infection. About 25% of the white blood cells are lymphocytes. They are part of the body's immune system and produce soluble proteins called antibodies. They help defend against viruses and bacteria. Antibodies can neutralize toxins produced by pathogens. They can also cause the destruction of pathogens by causing bacteria to burst open and die, labeling the pathogens so that it is recognized more easily by phagocytes, sticking pathogens together in clumps so that they can be engulfed by phagocytes more easily.